Okay, this video is going to talk about body paragraphs, and body paragraphs are like the meat of your essay, right? That's where all of the really good information is going to be stored and shared. And so body paragraphs are really, really important, and there are some very specific things that need to be present in body paragraphs, and there's a general order that those specific things should be in. So we're going to talk about that. Of course, there's slight flexibility in terms of where things go, but really there's kind of a structure to a body paragraph, and there are certain things that really need to be there. So let's talk about those certain things. Of course, the first thing you need is a topic sentence. You always start a body paragraph with a topic sentence. A topic sentence will introduce what will be discussed in the paragraph. It's essentially a thesis, but for a particular paragraph, right? So it's going to have your point, it's going to be detailed, it's going to be a narrow topic, it's going to stem from the thesis. So your thesis in general is going to have your main argument outlined, right? Like, this is what I think. A body paragraph is going to share one reason you think what you think, or maybe one aspect, one idea that supports your overall main idea in your thesis. So your topic sentence should be an idea. Okay, it shouldn't necessarily be a specific example. In fact, it should not include a specific example, although it is ultimately an example for your thesis. But it shouldn't have like a page number tied to it, or it shouldn't come directly from a book. Your topic sentence is an idea. Okay, and I'll show you an example of that in a little while. So again, always start your body paragraph with a topic sentence. Next, you're going to need to give evidence. That's where you get really specific. That's where you give page numbers, right? This is what I like to call a concrete detail. Okay, it's a detail that supports your topic sentence and ultimately supports your thesis, but it has to be something concrete, something where I can say, oh yeah, that's where I found that. Okay, so your concrete details really shouldn't be coming from your own brain, should be coming from other sources. So there you go. Concrete detail is the stuff from the story, right? The what. It can be a quotation or a paraphrase, but these are, maybe it's a fact, but usually it's an example from a book. It's your evidence, it's your support, it's a reference to the plot, and these will include citations. These will include parenthetical citations. You need concrete details to ultimately prove your thesis, right? You need concrete details to prove your topic sentence, but your topic sentence ultimately proves your thesis. So everything is working back up to that thesis from your intro paragraph. Okay? Again, always, always, always cite your concrete details. Within an essay, your body paragraphs should have a minimum of 2 concrete details per body paragraph, which means in each body paragraph, I should see at least 2 parenthetical citations because each concrete detail will have a citation. Okay. Oftentimes, students will even include a 3rd concrete detail per paragraph, and I highly recommend that, especially if the rest of your paragraph is lacking or it needs a little bit more, then add a 3rd concrete detail. Don't add too many more than 3 concrete details because then your paragraph is going to get too long and probably not as focused as it should be. Okay. After each concrete detail, you need to give analysis. And I call it analysis, although it really could be a number of different things. Okay. The analysis is the stuff from your head without using I, you, me, and my, right? Like, in my opinion, I think. You don't need that. Okay. But analysis is essentially the stuff from your head where you are talking about your concrete detail, okay? It's the so what. Why does this matter? Why did you give me this concrete detail? Why does this example help support the thesis? Or how does this example support the thesis? And that's where you kind of spell it out for your audience, right? Maybe your audience could put 2 and 2 together and figure out why your example is important, but it's not their job to do that. It's your job as the writer. So you have to spell it out and say, hey, this is why this example supports what I'm saying. Okay? So that's the analysis. It's the so what. Some other ways to do that is you could be an interpretation, right? I'm going to interpret this example this way. Maybe you're going to talk about a character's feelings in the quote. Maybe you're going to infer something. Maybe you're going to give insight on that particular example. Or maybe you're going to give a reason, again, why all of this supports what you are saying. This is really important. You should have more analysis than concrete detail. We should have more of your words in a paragraph than an author's words. Okay? So you need to make sure that your words outweigh your quotes. Okay? That's really, really important. Your words need to outweigh the quote. So again, some ways to do this. Explain or relate the importance. Again, please don't restate the concrete detail in different words. Don't just like say, oh, this is what this is saying. We can do that part on our own as the reader. What you need to do for us is tell us why that matters. Okay, why does this concrete detail matter? Why does this example help support what you are trying to say? Number 2, and this is kind of what I just said, how does it connect to improve your topic sentence, which should be ultimately supporting your thesis statement? Again, make that connection for your reader. Okay, you don't have to tell me what literally, like what the concrete detail says. You have to tell me why it's important. Okay. And then again, ultimately, this is all relating back to your thesis. Everything you do in your body paragraphs will support your thesis. So what does this tell me about my thesis? Okay. And then finally, you are going to need a closure or transition sentence, depending on what body paragraph you're on. A closure will give closure to a paragraph, but a transition is going to lead into the next idea or into the following body paragraph. A transition or closure doesn't give new facts. It doesn't give new examples. It just takes the reader and says, hey, this is what I've been talking about, and now we're going to move into talking about something else. Okay? Do not end a paragraph with a quote or an example. Okay? You're going to end your paragraph by leading into the next idea. Okay? The whole goal is for clarity and to not leave your audience confused, right? So if all of a sudden you're talking about one thing and then all of a sudden you move into something else, your audience is going to go, what? Okay, so a transition is moving into that next kind of idea. It's making it flow, okay? Making it seamless. A closure would then just close it out. That one would be like your third body paragraph because you're not moving into another idea, right? So you're not going to necessarily need to transition. Okay, so ultimately, this is your order of your body paragraph, and this is what it should look like, kind of, and it should follow this structure as well, okay? So you start with a topic sentence, right? Tell us what you're going to be talking about, and it should be kind of related to your thesis. Then move into your first example and give a citation for it, okay? After your first example or concrete detail, you give your analysis, you give your thoughts on it, okay? Then you move into your second concrete detail and you give your citation. Then you talk about that one for a little bit. Then if you have a third one, you give your third example or concrete detail. Talk about that one a little bit. And then you give some sort of closure or transition sentence into the next body paragraph or moving into the conclusion paragraph. One thing that you don't see here, but I'm gonna show you in just a second, is that you need to weave into your concrete details as well. So there should be kind of transitions between your concrete details, and there should be context that leads into your concrete details as well. Let me show you an example of a paragraph that has all of these things. Okay, so here I have a sample body paragraph. So we're going to go over the different components of a body paragraph and give an actual example of each of the pieces. So with this essay prompt, it's not going to necessarily make sense if you haven't read A Monster Calls, but that's okay. You'll still be able to kind of see the structure of a body paragraph. The essay prompt says, how has Connor's view of the monster changed and developed in A Monster Calls? So we're looking at Connor and how he is changing his view of this monster, okay? So the sample body paragraph, the first sentence says, initially, Connor views the visiting monster as a lame inconvenience. So this right here is what we call our topic sentence. Okay, and one thing that's important to notice about our topic sentence here is that ultimately this topic sentence does relate back to the prompt, because in the prompt is talking about Connor and his view of the monster. So notice it says Connor views the visiting monster as, right? And then it gives us initially the first one, right? It says initially. So we know that the next paragraph is maybe going to move on from a lame inconvenience to something else, but this paragraph specifically has to do with him viewing him as a lame inconvenience, right? And that's important that each paragraph is a little bit different, which means your topic sentence should show that, right? I love this that I have a transition word here initially, because then that allows for movement afterwards, right? And we know that it ultimately supports my thesis, whatever my thesis may be, right? So there's my topic sentence. Moving on, we have, upon first meeting the monster, Connor quickly shows that he is not at all impressed by this massive monster that evolved and came to life out of the yew tree. He doesn't seem scared by it or the situation at all. In fact, when the monster reveals that he will tell Connor 3 stories, Connor replies, "You're going to tell me stories? How is that a nightmare?" Okay, the reason why I highlighted this one in a different color is because we're actually doing something different here. We are giving context, okay, that's going to lead into our actual quote. Now, more specifically, here, I'm giving what is called a contextual lead-in. Specifically, this part that I just kind of put brackets around or parentheses around, that is leading into my quote, right? Quotes should never ever stand alone as complete sentences by themselves. They need to be attached to your own words as well. So when the monster reveals that he will tell Connor 3 stories, Connor replies, comma, "You're going to tell me stories? How is that a nightmare?" Ness 35. So there, I actually have my concrete detail, number 1. So I'm going to abbreviate it with CD number 1, okay? Notice, too, that I have a parenthetical citation there that includes author's last name and page number, okay? So far, I've got my topic sentence. I've got some kind of background context to help us understand where the quote is coming from. Then I actually give the quote and I tie it into my own words, okay? And I give a parenthetical citation. After that, we're going to move into the analysis. So this is why this is important. The emphasis in italics that Ness places on stories and that demonstrates Connor's skeptical, sarcastic tone. Clearly, he is unconvinced of the monster's power or intended purpose in coming walking. So in this section, I'm giving my analysis, but I'm actually explaining here why my quote here, the one in blue, actually supports the idea of him being an inconvenience or a lame inconvenience, right? That he doesn't really seem impressed by it. And I used words from the actual quote itself, and I broke that down and I said, here, look, those words help suggest that Connor views this thing as lame, right? He's not impressed by it. And so in my analysis, it is okay to use words from the original quote to help support and discuss why your quote is important or why your quote actually connects back then to the topic sentence, okay? So here we have topic sentence, some context, a contextual lead-in. We've got our detail itself in blue. Now we've got our analysis. The next thing we're going to look at here is kind of different. This is going to transition us into our next concrete detail. So not only is Connor unimpressed with the monster, notice that's what we were just talking about, but he's likely a little bit annoyed with having to clean up after its mess. Okay, so this right here is a transition, and it's a transition to concrete detail number 2. Okay, now here, after the monster left Connor, I'm going to get my green again because again, we're looking at context. After the monster left Connor, he left pieces of himself to demonstrate that he's real, not imaginary, or just a dream. When Connor woke up in the morning and stepped onto his bedroom floor, he discovered that okay, so once again, all of this is context. Okay, it's context for concrete detail number 2. Right here is my contextual lead-in. That's my contextual lead-in that leads us into the quote or example itself. The floor was covered in poisonous red yew tree berries. Okay, and again, we have our parenthetical citation. This time it just has a page number because it's coming from the same source, from the same author. Okay, so here we've got our second concrete detail. Next, you should be able to figure out what's coming up next. It's the analysis, right? So now, on top of the other things Connor has to handle, making himself breakfast, wiping down the counters, taking out the trash, worrying about his mother, arguing with his grandmother, etc., he also has to pick up after the monster. So not only is Connor unimpressed by the monster, he's also left with the inconvenient chore of cleaning up after it. Okay, so again, this helps explain why the concrete detail that I used helps connect us back to this idea of him being lame and an inconvenience. The first one has to do with it being lame. The second concrete detail, the fact that he has to pick up after this monster makes him an inconvenience. Okay? Now, this last sentence here, I'm going to highlight in pink because this is not transitioning to the next concrete detail. It's transitioning to the next paragraph. So notice it says, but despite this rocky start, Connor's attitude does start to change with each story. Notice it says start to change. What does that imply is going to come next in the next paragraph? That there will be a different view of the monster, right? So this is right here a transition to next paragraph. Okay, and so I hope that this has been helpful for you to just kind of see what a paragraph looks like and where things go. Good luck. Have fun.